had surgery. Gallbladder surgery. It's gone. It's out of me. Got a bunch of wounds. My belly hurts. But I need to make videos. I've been watching a lot of cartoons. And I learned that Warhammer makes cartoons. They have a whole little service, Warhammer Plus. Is it worth it? I don't friggin' know. So I thought I'd get it, I'd watch a bunch of Warhammer cartoons, and then I would just tell you if they were good and if I liked them and what they were about. I'm on pain medicine. I'm a little loopy. Okay? Okay? I forgot to mention, we're going to be watching the first animated series that they made, I think, which is called Hammers and Bolters. And I think it's a bunch of vignettes. Slice of life in Warhammer 40k. Alright, to the first episode. The first episode was called Death's Hand, and right off the bat, the animation is okay. It's not that good. It's not that bad. It's not that good. It's somewhere between like 80s animation mixed with those moving comics that used to be really popular on YouTube where they would like make a comic book kind of move. Feels like half animated. I'm worried because it's Warhammer and there's a lot of fighting that it's going to make the fighting kind of boring because the fighting in this was kind of boring. All right, so it starts off with this guy getting his tarot cards read. Tarot? Tarot. Carrot. Tarot. Bubble tea. Okay, he's getting his fortune read. And the guy who's getting his fortune read, he looks like he's Spacemarine, Inquisitor vibe. He's got a funny little tattoo, and he's sort of obsessed with death. Okay. Oh, God, this is going to go so bad. Okay, so he's getting his fortune read, and it's like, oh, bad things, death, omens, trouble. And he's like, oh, I must find the right way. He's trying to find a prophecy where he does well. And he's going to Terra soon to get some investitures. He's going to be a popular boy on Terra. He's going to Terra to get his stripes. He's going to be a big head honcho full of investing and chures. He's talking to his sidekick and he's like, oh, we're going to make this work. And then another Inquisitor comes. And then it made me think, okay, maybe he's not an Inquisitor because this guy feels more Inquisitor-y. And the other Inquisitor is like a little bit of a scrawny guy. He seems like they're sort of old friends. And he's like, hey, don't do weird prophecy stuff, guy. And the guy's like, listen, the Eldar do weird prophecy stuff, and like it works. And he's like, that's heretical, my guy. They don't really say that, but they're kind of saying that. Anyway, they get into a fight because, you know, Space Marines, and the big guy beats the little guy. And again, animation, not that interesting, not that exciting. There's like moments that look really cool. Like if you turned it into still frames, it'd be like, oh, that's a great little still. But coming off of like the Astartes animations that were on YouTube a while ago, and even like the Space Marine vignette that was in that Amazon show, these fight scenes are bad. Fight scene happens, seems like, all right, well, I guess this guy's gonna keep being a crazy guy. And then one of the old people astropaths starts to like and change. And I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be some demon and it's gonna reveal that this guy's been cursed and he's going mad and he's corrupted. But no, it wasn't a demon. It was a shape-changing assassin person, which I'm pretty sure are part of the Imperium. I don't actually know that much about them. 99% sure that they are people that are like biologically genuinely messed with from the Adeptus Mechanicus, which are like the robot guys, and they're just pumped full of drugs and turned into super assassins that can make themselves look different. This assassin person comes out and she is super quick. She's like, and again, the fight scene's not that good, but you can see what they're trying to get across, and there's images that are great. There's some good imagery. You like a little bit of imagery. And then Turk comes. Turk. And I was like, ooh, who's Turk gonna be? Turk seems like he's an Ogren that was given orc robot parts. He's got like a big claw arm. He doesn't seem as friendly as the Ogren, but he's like a big guy. He's like, oh, I'm big, I got a claw. And doesn't matter. Bio-assassin takes him out. Ooh, trouble. Turk, he goes boom. But he doesn't kill the bio-assassin. She just gets captured. Also, I cut my finger. It's fine. The least egregious of my injuries at this moment. All right, so she's alive. The big guy's like, all right, we're going to interrogate her. He puts her in an interrogation room. He's like, hey, who sent you to kill me? Because he's crazy. He's paranoid. He's convinced he's going to meet this great demise, and he really doesn't want to. I mean, I guess who does? They start having this conversation about like prophecy and stuff, and she starts reading his cards. She's like, I will read your tarot cards. And he's like, all right, fine. It doesn't matter that your fingers look like spaghetti sometimes. Read my fortune. And as she's reading his fortune, and she's like, oh, you should have listened because I lost to you, but you know what? I didn't lose because I wasn't here to kill you. I was here to get you in this room without your armor on. Now here you are. Baba bing, baba boom. And then she tilts her head, and it turns out super secret assassin was sitting on top of a spaceship in the back with a big rifle. Gets his brain blasted out. And then she, because she can do all wiggly stuff, she changes herself to look like him. And now she's going to Terra to get invested in churs. Ooh. Moral of the story, either listen to the prophecy if you're going to, or just don't, man. Just don't get your tarot cards read. You know, just live your life. Hubris. It gets you. Pretty good first episode. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Episode 2, Bound for Greatness. I liked this episode a lot. I think I like this episode more than the first episode. It was one of those episodes which I kind of hope the whole show is, where you don't really need to know that much about Warhammer to get into what's actually happening in the show. It might shine a light on an aspect of the Warhammer universe, but it's just kind of like a fun little vignette. The amount of world building in this episode was crazy too. Okay, sorry. So, what was this episode about? We follow a librarian, or a librarian in the Warhammer sense, which is basically a monk that walks around all day, every day, counting books. There's a little Vox speaker that plays that it's like, we do not read, and thinking is bad, and if you question things, you accept lies, and you're not supposed to think about anything, which is ironic, because you're a librarian. You're a library guy. Also, the episode opens with some people going out with books of the library to proselytize to the masses about the greatness of the Emperor. And throughout the episode, we see that these preachers come back to the library every day or so to get new books of new sermons to go out. Really, what we're focusing on for the story is this one priest. No, he's not a priest. He's like a monk. He's like a reader. He's a nobody. And every day he goes and he just counts books. 1001, 1002, 1003, etc. And one day he notices that there's a blank space where there's like a book should be there and there's not. And he has like a little like, ooh, this could be bad moment. And then it's fine. And he goes to the cafeteria and he eats his corpse sludge. But they ate corpse sludge, by the way. I don't think they call it that. They call it corpse starch. But it's sludge. They probably just use the word starch to try to make it sound like it's better. It's a very minor amount of propaganda in the larger scope of things, because I don't know if starch is better than sludge, but it's sludge. He goes to the cafeteria, and then there's a guy, and the guy's like, hey, have you ever noticed that there's sometimes the wrong amount of books? And he's like, what? Why would you say that? Oh, leave me alone. And he runs away. Later, he's counting more books. The priests keep coming to get more books to go proselytize, and he goes back to that spot, but this time where there was a blank space, there's a book. And he hears all of these spooky noises and all of these demon voices that are like, oh, a book. You want to read it. You better look at that book. It looks so cool. Why don't you look at it? And you see like tentacles coming out of the shadows. It's actually, I think, a really good way of showing how simple and nefarious demonic corruption is in the Warhammer universe. And it's a little bit of like a snake eating its own tail, because if you live a whole life of such abject like subjugation and you don't think about anything, you don't question anything, it really only takes the tiniest amount of questioning things to sort of shatter your reality. So part of me is like, I wonder if these guys question things more, if the demons that were all about, hey, knowledge is good, you get knowledge, would have to work a lot harder. It'd be like, oh, we gotta find the calculus kids. We gotta get the guys that really like quantum physics because they want to question the bigger things, you know? He doesn't read the book. And he's like, oh, I'm a badass. I didn't read the book. And he's going about his day, doing his things. And then he sees that guy again that was like, you ever notice the books are the wrong amount? And the guy's like, hey. And he's like, hey, I noticed the books were the wrong amount. And the guy's like, oh, did you read the book? And he's like, no. He's like, oh, cool. Well, where is it? For no reason at all. I'm just curious. And he tells him where it is. And when the priest goes back to count books, it sounds like he's only counting the same books in one section also, because he keeps going back to that same spot. It's missing again, and he freaks out. Oh, I'm so upset. Oh, he goes looking for the guy, and he's like, where's that guy? Where's that guy? Hey, where's that guy? And the prefect, the leader of this little order, who's like, hey, you better listen. You better count your books. I'm the one that gives the books to the lady so she can go preach. He's like, hey, that guy doesn't even exist. You're fucking crazy. You better get in line or trouble. He's like, oh, my bad. And as he leaves, we see that the prefect has bird demon arms, which is like, oh, okay. We know where this is going. The guy starts to fall for corruption, and the prefect is like, yes, I should use him for my corruption. Because when he goes back, there is a book there, but this time it's all gnarly and gross looking like the Necronomicon. And when he pulls it out, it's the guy's face and all these demon tentacles, and it's like, oh, corruption, demon tentacles, corruption. But then there's another book, and it's like, oh, I guess it's nice. And he pulls that book out, and you see that it's one of the books that are like, hey, Emperor. But as he's reading it, all the words start to change, and they become the changer of ways, which, if you didn't know, Warhammer stuff is one of the chaos gods, Tzeentch, which is the chaos god that corrupts you through, like, curiosity. Great for a library. The guy gets all freaked out. The book melts him. He turns into the book. And the very last thing we see is that prefect taking these corrupted books that look like normal books, but every now and then you see a flash of a person's face. Oh, that hurt a little bit. Of a person's face snarled up. And he gives them to the preachers, and we watch as the preachers take these corrupted books and go out to proselytize, unknowingly proselytizing corruption and preaching the change of ways. And we see as a planet starts to fall to demon corruption. I liked this episode a lot. I think that a lot of the qualms I had with the animation in the first episode didn't really come up this one because there wasn't a lot of action. The aesthetic was really good. All of the vibe was really good. I really liked seeing a slice of life of the monks that just read that they don't even read, the monks that count the number of books every day. I like that this episode is just about some random dude. I'm worried that if a lot of this show is about really cool, epic, badass guys, they're not going to feel that epic and badass because they're sort of limited in the animation style, unfortunately. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I like this one a lot more than the first one. I'm going to check what time it is to see when I can take more pain medicine. Take more pain medicine. And then I am going to watch the third episode, and we'll be back. Episode 3, Old Bale Eye. I liked this episode more than I think it is a good episode because it's all about the orcs. And I like the orcs. They're my favorite. They were always my favorite. And this tells one of the more classic stories of the orcs. It's all about Old Bale Eye, Commissar Yarrick, who is the quintessential human enemy of the orcs, and the orcs love him. He's one of the only people that the orcs like, and they like him a lot. The way the episode works is you're seeing these two orcs scrapping about, trying to mess with this little guy who's a grot. Grots are like little goblins that work for the orcs and are minor orcoids, and they eat them sometimes. And then this big orc comes, and he's like, hey, don't mess with the little guy. If you guys want to be big and strong and tough like me, you need big and strong and tough enemies to get big and strong and tough, like Old Bale Eye. He says, sit around the fire, young orcs, and I shall tell you the tale. After he punches them and beats them up a little bit, because, orcs. So then he tells the story of Old Bale Eye. First of all, when it starts, it sort of turns into like a wrestling promo for a little bit. There's all these like emblems appearing on the screen and very fast cuts and fun rock music, and it's great. That's one of the best parts of the whole episode, is just when they're describing how cool and intense Yarrick is, and Gazgul Thraka. It just turns into like wrestling promo. It was really funny. And then it gets into the actual plot. So you learn about this human Commissar Yarrick. He was fighting some orcs, and there was a big war orc with a claw hand. And then the guy used his claw hand to cut off Yarrick's hand. And Yarrick's like, I'll cut off your head. That's better than a hand. And then all the other orcs that worked for this war boss look kind of scared. And Yarrick picks up the claw arm of the orc boss he just killed, holds it over his head, and I think he says, like, which parts will you give me? And it's really cool. All the orcs run away, and he becomes like a legend. To the point where he learned that orcs heard that he could kill with a glare, so he gets a laser eye put in his eye, so he can actually kill with a glare, which I think is very fun. Side note, all the orc vehicles, all the orc tech looks awesome in this, and it makes me like the animation less. I feel like it would look awesome if it was just drawn, and it would look awesome if it was really well animated, but this sort of half still images, sometimes animated, lots of weird cuts and croppings. I just don't think it works. It doesn't work for me anyway. I'm giving a lot of grace here too, because it's the orcs, and I love the orcs. They're my favorite. Can't stop, won't stop. After Yarick gets his big claw arm and his laser eye, he starts leading a big chase against Ghazghul Thraka to chase him down across the realm. Did I say who Ghazghul Thraka was? Ghazghul Thraka was like the leader of the orcs. Big, cool, scary guy. And we see this, essentially a slideshow, showing how Ghazghul's troops defeated the humans using their cunning. Okay, there's a little bit of charm to it. It's also very clear that it's like, we just aren't going to draw all this stuff. And it's like, okay, it's fine. I accept it in this situation. But it's also like, I noticed it too, you know? Yarick and his crew get imprisoned, and they're now slaves to the orcs. And while Yarick is a slave to the orcs, he leads a slave rebellion against the orcs. And there's little moments in it, again, where you're like, oh man, this would be so fun to see. It would be so exciting to watch, like, these malnutritioned humans needing to use really intense, like, tactical thinking to defeat the orcs. Because it's not even just, like, prisoners escaping people. It's prisoners escaping 10-foot tall, super strong monster people. So there's just like many layers to how epic that is, and it's fine. Very comic booky. I could have watched that episode. That could have just been a whole episode. Would have been really fun to see. Eventually, Yarick and his crew, they make a bunch of explosions happen. Seems like everybody dies except Yarick, and he wakes up and he is being fixed up by orcs. Ooh. And then he's paraded down a hall of orcs, which is another really cool feeling moment, and I wish it was a little longer. This felt kind of rushed. I feel like it could have been a slower down the hall, and just seeing so many orcs looking at this guy that they're like really excited and sort of afraid of at the same time. Excited and afraid of? Excited by and afraid of. And when he gets to the end of the line, he sees Ghazghul Thraka, and Ghazghul Thraka puts him in a spaceship and sends him back to the humans because, quote, good enemies is hard to find. And it's a cool moment. It's a really fun moment in the lore, but I also know in the lore that Ghazghul Thraka is smart. He speaks proper old Gothic. I don't love that the only time he speaks in the show, he kind of just sounds like the other orcs. I think it would be more interesting if he spoke sort of like the way Commissar Yarick spoke. Hello there, human. Greetings and salutations. So Yarick gets sent back, and then we see a montage of Yarick fighting against Ghazghul's forces, and the story kind of wraps with the big orc looking at the little orcs, and he's like, ah yes, and the fight continues. And also, it was my fight, because I have a robot leg, and I have a robot leg because Commissar Yarick cut off my leg, so he's my enemy too. So I'm also really badass. The framing of it being a story told by a big orc to little orcs, I think, is interesting, but I don't actually think it uplifts the story. I feel like the story might have been better if it was just narrated by an orc and they were describing the history of Yarick. I think the ending would have felt stronger if it ended when Yarick is revived by the orcs and sent back, because nothing really happens after that. There's just sort of like and they fight and fight and fight more. If I was going to rate this one, it's basically the same as the first. So 6 out of 10. And I think even then I'm being a little bit extra kind because it's orcs and I like orcs. Let's watch another one. We got some tea, we got some pain medicine, and we watched another episode of Hammers and Bolters. This one is all about the space wolves. Ooh. There's also some music playing in my neighbor's house. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Normally I'd want to check something like that out. It sounds fun, but if my torso moves more than a couple inches at a time right now, let's talk about Fangs. Space wolves. If you don't know what the space wolves are, They're a chapter of the Space Marines. They're a very popular one because they're very iconic. They're all about wolves, and Vikings and Norse stuff. They live on a big ice planet. And this episode, we're following sort of two different stories at the same time. The first story we're following is a bunch of old Space Wolves, Space Marines, playing a game of some sort. They play it with monster teeth. Keep that in mind. There's Beardy, White Beardy, and Arnold Schwarzenegger bone backpack. And they all look really cool. The bone bits of monster aesthetic is one of my favorites. I like it so much. Anyway, they're like, oh, we're old, right? Yeah, but we're not that old. Oh, we still have the fire in us. My fire is still super much a fire. Yeah, but it's you're old. Yeah, I'm old. And as they're playing, they're talking about, oh, well, we'll see. Maybe one of our pups will bring us another piece. Ooh, foreshadowing. So then it starts flashing between these aspirants, these pups that are sent out to get more game pieces. And there's a bunch of them. Well, there's three. You got Emo Stark, you got Lil He-Man, and you got Jumpy Tattoo. The first one we watch is Jumpy Tattoo. Jumpy Tattoo is fighting this big bat monster. And they're jumping around the trees, using their tattoos, using their jumping. And it's a pretty cool fight scene. This is one of the first fight scenes that I felt like I didn't notice the quality of the animation in it. Like, it still just felt like a fun fight scene. Cool. Anyway, he gets killed by the big bat monster, so he loses. Whichever Space Marine he was working for, they're not getting their piece. Sorry, buddy. I think next we watch Emo Stark. And Emo Stark is fighting, get it, a wolf. Wow, who would have thought? A wolf on Fenris? There's no wolves on Fenris. Well, there's at least this one, because he definitely fights it. And it's a big wolf, it's got a scar in its eye. And it's a boring fight, stupid, but eventually the wolf slams into him and they crash over a cliff and into the water. And while in the water, he manages to smash the wolf's head on a spike thing, gets the wolf's tooth, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna do it. And as he's swimming up to the top of the water, he starts to drown. So, okay, well, he's dead. And then we're sort of cutting back and forth between the old guys and the young guys, and the old guys are like, oh, hey, speaking of old, am I right? And they're like, yeah, you better believe it. Well, we're old, yeah, but we're still Space Wolves, yeah, but we're also old Space Wolves, but to be young Space Wolves, yeah, well, Space Wolves. And then it jumps back to the young guys, and we see Lil He-Man. Lil He-Man is fighting a spiky bear. Oh, yes, it's like a bear, but spiky. And it's a pretty good fight. He jams a spike in its eye and is like hammering it in, and it's gross. But he gets the better of it. He kills it with a rock. Classic Lil He-Man. But, turns out it was just one of the bears, and there was a much bigger one, and the bigger bear smashes him against the wall. Icicle falls on him, and he dies. Listen, if you're fighting a big bear, look out for icicles. All this old Space Wolves sort of are like, oh man, we're all having a hard time. No one's winning this board game tonight. Which is also sort of symbolic for what's happening to the guys that we sent out. Oh boy, well, too bad. No one's getting any extra pieces because everyone died. Well, we don't know that because we're just playing the game, but we know that because we're the audience. But then, we see Lil Emo Stark, not Lil He-Man. We see Emo Stark punch through the ice, holding a tooth of the wolf thing he killed. And he climbs out of the ice and he's like, oh yeah, I'm so tough and cold. And he gets back to the castle. And then when he gets back to the castle, he brings the tooth to the old guys. And they're like, hey, look at you. Well, you must have killed a crazy monster. And he's just like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And they're like, go to bed. But also, tomorrow is when the real training begins. And then we see a flash to the future. And it's Emo Stark. And he's in full Space Marine armor. And he's got his own necklace of giant teeth. He's got a chainsword. And he's charging into battle because he got to be a Space Wolf. And that was the episode. Pretty good. You know what? It was fun. It was a fun episode. I really liked that it wasn't trying to do more than it was trying to do. It went by pretty quick. The old Space Marines talking and being old was fun. I think I did great impressions of them, by the way. The only thing that I didn't love was all the monsters were just like, it's a bear, it's a bat, it's a wolf. It would have been fun if there was more weird monsters. My belly doesn't hurt as much right now. And maybe we'll take a little break, and then I'm going to watch another one. Oh, should I rate this one? Yeah, this one gets a 7. We took a little break, we had some dinner, party's over, and we watched another episode, A Question of Faith. I think that's what it was called. In this episode, we hang out with some Sisters of Battle. I think they're Sisters of Battle. They're Sisters of something, which are basically nuns under the Emperor. We got Sister Grumpy and Sister Faith. And Sister Grumpy is like, oh, why you lighting these candles? Oh, we gotta hold this place off. And Sister Faith is like, I light the candles because it is my faith. Sister Grumpy's like, yeah, or is it your duty? And it's like, two sides of the same coin. Maybe the theme of the episode. Sister Faith, she's lighting these candles, and she explains that this is a shrine or a tomb. I think it's a tomb. They call it a shrine, but it definitely has a sarcophagus with a dead body in it. That'll come into play later. It's to this Saint Josephine, who did a bunch of badass fighting against demons, and it was like, oh, she's not going to be able to fight all the demons, and then she gets in a big pile of demons, and then the Emperor's like, guess what? You are now empowered. She gets big crazy angel wings and kills all the demons, and now the story goes that she empowers these Sisters of Battle when they are in moments of martyrdom, when it's like, oh, she's probably gonna, and she's doing it for the Emperor. She becomes a vessel for Sister Josephine and gets avatar powers, basically. So they're talking, and they're like, so what do you want to do when this is done, when we're done holding this place, if we survive? And Sister Grumpy is like, I'd like to go to the library where we come from and look at all the books, because there's so much knowledge and stories about our people, which is interesting because there was just an episode about how you don't want knowledge, but I guess this is like the knowledge that's good to have if you're like buying into the rhetoric. That's the thing about Warhammer, is it's very fascist, and it's intentionally fascist, and it's a critique of fascism. Some people don't realize that, and they are dumb. Don't be them. So she's like, I want to go read all the books. What do you want to do when we're done this? And Sister Faith is all like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing my duty. It's what I do. And she's like, really? You're giving your whole life to this place. And then Sister Faith is like, or is this place giving my life meaning? Ooh, who knows? Who's to say? And then the demon cultists attack, and we see Sister Grumpy. She takes out her gun. She's like, killing guys. Sister Faith goes to take out her gun. It doesn't work, so she takes out her sword, and she starts slicing guys. Maybe I've just been watching these episodes for a little bit, or maybe the pain medicine has kicked in nicely at this point, but I'm starting not to mind the animation as much. Maybe I can't tell if I'm getting used to it, or I feel like it's just being better implemented here, but they're pretty fun little fight scenes. As Sister Faith is fighting with her sword, she keeps saying, like, be with me, Josephine. Be with me, Emperor. They hold off the first attack, and then as soon as it's done, Sister Faith goes right back to lighting some candles. And they have a little bit more of, like, duty and faith. Two sides of the same coin? Perhaps. Conversation. They reveal that they're basically trying to hold this point until some other Sisters of Battle can come and reinforce them. Then more cultists come, and they're a little bit more intense. There's a whole chainsword thing. Sister Grumpy cuts a guy in half with one. It's pretty cool. And Sister Faith is like getting tired and woozy, and one of them gets stabbed. I think Sister Faith gets stabbed. And as she falls, she knocks over the candle that she's been lighting, and a little fire starts to spread. And you see Sister Grumpy, and she gets grumpy. And I'm not sure if it was the music or the way her eyes looked sort of angry and afraid at the same time, but you see her sort of like tense, and she says, sisters be with me, and then starts fighting. And I got little chills in that moment. That was a good moment. I like that moment. That was a good moment. That might have been the most emotionally impactful moment I've had in the show so far. I wasn't expecting to have any real emotional moments, so even like a little bit of one was kind of nice. She gets like this crazy rage and starts fighting all the guys, and she gets down to the last one, and he stabs her, and he's like, oh, Korn is gonna be really happy with your skull. And she's like, yeah? And then she stabs him in the head, and he's like, well, you're dead now, but I'm probably dead too. And then they both fall down. And the room is like, oh, look at all these dead people. Sister Grumpy's like looking around like, where are you, Josephine? And she looks and she realizes the sarcophagus in the room has been broken. And you can see a dead body inside holding a sword. So she grabs the sword, and when she does, wow, she has a vision, and it's like, oh, is she gonna get Avatar mode? She wasn't really martyr headspace. And she gets this vision from Saint Josephine. Saint Josephine is like, hey, sister, you're really cool. Like, go, you're awesome, you're totally it, you're the it girl, but also, you're not gonna be my vessel right now. You know why, because I'm giving you this vision. And she's like, oh, I do know why, because I'm getting this vision. I'm gonna be honest, the vision wasn't super clear to me, but hey, I'm not a sister of battle, I'm not here to interpret. Regardless, she goes like, okay, You, Sister Faith, who's 99% dead, you're going to be the vessel. So she puts the sword in Sister Faith's hand, and Sister Faith, her hand squeezes around the blade, and her eyes go big. She goes Avatar mode, and she like flies up into the air, and as she does, all these other cultists start coming in, and she starts just like burning them all away, and she's yelling crazy rhetoric and like, "Oh, I shall give you the Emperor's mercy." You just see a bunch of stills of the cultists, and then it's sort of a burning noise, and it kind of fades to white. But she took care of business. And then as the light fades, you see with her last bit of energy, she is picking up one of the candles that fell and relighting it to put the vigil at the shrine. I thought that was going to be the end, but there was a more end, and I remember thinking, is there going to be a twist? But not really. At the end, we see Sister Grumpy now being the one that lights the candles at the vigil, as she is now starting to understand that she is both duty and faith, I guess, or whatever. It was a pretty good one. I think that this show is at its best when there are not a lot of individuals on the screen at the same time, so they can focus more on making the ones that are on the screen kind of look cool and move cool. Whenever they do these big panoramic battle scenes, it just feels so stilted. So yeah, I'm gonna say this one is probably a 6.5. It is now the next day. It's raining, so you might hear some thunder. And yeah, I'm wearing the same shirt as I was wearing before, because I need to make a little bit of money right now, and I'm promoting it. I have a merch store. I have sweatshirts and t-shirts. They got this thing on them. They're nice. Consider supporting me in my time of need. Episode 6, In the Garden of Ghosts. This time, there's space elves. This is the first episode that follows any Xenos as the main characters, and it follows the Eldar. No, that's not true. There was the Ork episode, but Orks don't feel like Xenos to me. They just feel like the boys. So I guess technically that's the first alien episode, but this is the first episode that isn't the boys or the Imperium. We start off with this one guy who's a warlock, which means he's a space elf that does kind of magic stuff. Ooh. And he is walking around this desolate wasteland of a craft world. Craft worlds are like the Eldar planets. We're not gonna go into the lore. They don't go into it. You don't need to worry about it. It's full of gnarled, burnt trees and what almost look like the bones of like coral reefs. And as he's walking around, he bumps into another Eldar who we're gonna call Tattoo. So we got Warlock and we got Tattoo. And Warlock is walking around this wasteland of a craft world and touching things, and then vroom, seeing visions of the beauty that they once were. And the beauty that they once were is very elf. Very elf. I would argue if you just saw those scenes, you wouldn't think they were space elves. You would just think regular elves. Warlock is like, we must find the soul stone. We must seek the past. And Tattoo is like, the past is the past. We must strive forward to protect our people. And they're looking for soul stones. If you don't know what a soul stone is, whenever an Eldar dies, if they're wearing their special little soul stone, their soul gets sucked into that stone. So other Eldar could find that stone and plug it into their technology to basically preserve their soul and create a facsimile of an afterlife. If an Eldar dies and they don't have their soul stone, their soul is immediately eaten up by the Chaos God Slanesh, because a long time ago, they had way too much of a party. So they're touching stuff, they're seeing visions. Some of these visions are the ancient, beautiful times, but we start to also see visions of Space Marines. Space Marines attacking this craft world. And this is the first time we see Space Marines from an alien perspective. And this episode in particular does a really good job of showing how terrifying a Space Marine is. The Space Marines are very big and bulky and slashy. And because it's from an Eldar perspective, it really humanizes the Eldar, which I gotta say is a great thing to do. Not for the Imperium, not for the Emperor, but if you're trying to tell stories from the perspective of aliens, those stories are going to be sympathetic towards those aliens. Come on. You know what I mean? Unless you're an orc, and then you don't need sympathy, you just need to thwack stuff. As they're walking around, eventually they meet up with their boss, whose name I forget. He's Eldar with cool fancy armor dude. They have more of a conversation about like, oh, let's go, what are we doing here? And cool fancy armor Eldar is like, okay, but look at that. And he shows them the desiccated body of an ancient avatar of the Eldar gods. These like super weapons of the Eldar that are basically like manifestations of their divine stuff sent down into these giant golem, sort of predator-looking monsters. And in the context of the lore, they sort of have the same issue as the, what's his name, the Klingon from Star Trek, where it's like, they're so tough and they're so unbeatable, but that leads to them getting beaten all the time to indicate how strong something else is. Like, this thing was so strong it beat one of those Eldar avatars. What is that guy's name? Oh, I don't remember anything in my whole life. You know who I'm talking about. This guy. His name's not Krang, but I keep wanting to say Krang. But Krang is the little stomach monster from Dimension X and Ninja Turtles. I have a really good friend who's obsessed with Star Trek, and if he decides to watch this video, he legitimately is going to be annoyed with me that I didn't call him to ask. Oh, thunder. Did you hear that? We'll see if the power stays. They see this giant dead Avatar Titan, and fancy armor boss Eldar is like, you want to see the real vision, you gonna touch that. And the tattoo one is like, oh, I don't know if you should. And he's like, of course I'm going to. So he touches the dead ancient big thing, and you see a very cool fight scene. Maybe my favorite fight scene so far, where you see a really badass Eldar in the fancy armor running around and fighting Space Marines. Also, this is where you get moments of like seeing a dreadnought marching with a giant chain gun going mowing things down as he yells, I bring the mercy of the Emperor, and like crazy stuff like that, where you really feel like, oh my goodness, Space Marines are scary if you are not on their side. The Eldar are getting mowed down, some Space Marines are getting mowed down, but you're following this one super badass Eldar, and he's like weaving in between Space Marines, and at one point he chops off a Space Marine's head, but not the whole head, just like the top, and that's pretty gnarly. And then he faces off with like the super Space Marine, and the Space Marine is like, alien. And then he looks at the Space Marine and says, barbarian. And that was a fun little moment. And he kills the super Space Marine after he gets messed up, and he takes his mask off, and you realize, oh, that guy that was in this fight so long ago is the old guy who was there being like, touch the dead thing. Fights continue. Eventually, the Avatar shows up, but it's already beaten and bruised, and it's slashing up Space Marines and starts to die. And you're like, okay, that was pretty cool. And like the monster looked cool. He looked sort of like the monster at the end of Ragnarok. At that point, I'm going to be honest, there was a part of me that was like, what is the point? Like, it's a cool fight scene. I don't understand why seeing this matters that much. But then it does a nice little thing where the vision continues, and you see a Eldar woman in the past running with an Eldar child. She takes him to this space, and they're like, we will hold them off. Every minute we hold off these Space Marines is another life we save. And she puts her child down, and he's like, oh, Mom, don't leave me. And she's like, you have to run to the ship. You have to run to the ship. And he's like, I'm scared. And she does this thing where she like kisses her fingers and puts them on his head, and he gets his little marks of blood. She's like, run, I will protect you. And he runs off, and she turns and she starts joining the fighting force. We flash back to the present, and the warlock, the one who was touching the thing and seeing the visions, he's still seeing visions, and he's like running around like a crazy person, like, there's still time, there's still time. The tattoo Eldar is like, what do we do? He's going crazy. And the old one is like, he is supposed to go crazy. He is a warlock. He chooses to see like a seer, so the seer must see, and the sot must be sown. They're like, okay, I guess we follow this crazy guy. So he starts running around as he's seeing these visions of the past in the battlefield. That actually happens before there's the flashback, the mom and the child, but whatever. And he tears some things back, and he finds the corpse with the little soul stone, unbroken, with a soul preserved in it. And you're like, that's probably the lady. And he was probably the little kid. And he picks up the soul stone. You're like, oh, Okie dokie, artichoke. It flashes to he is in a room with this big Eldar robot thing. And if you don't understand what's going on because you don't know the lore of the Eldar, welcome to like 70% of the people that like Warhammer, because very few people like the Eldar. They're like, I don't know why. People don't like space elves that much. The people that do like the space elves really like the space elves, though. I had a whole conversation with the dungeon dudes about the space elves at PAX Unplugged. Monty's a big fan. But if you don't know what's going on, that stone has the soul of that Eldar. He takes the stone, he puts it into the robot, and the robot comes to life, and it has a voice like the woman from the past, and it says, "It's cold. I cannot see. Oh, where am I?" Warlock speaks, and he's like, "Your senses will take time to adjust. In the meantime, I will be your eyes." And then she says, "My child. Did my child survive? Does my child live?" And the warlock, he steps forward and he does the same thing that she did when he was a little kid. He like kisses his fingers and like puts them on the robot. The child lives. And I tell ya, loopy state or not, I got a little emotional. I'm getting a little emotional right now. This was great. This was a great moment. To be fair, every single episode I feel like could be maybe 5 minutes shorter than it is, and it would be better. They're all only like 20 minutes long, but the whole part of seeing the Avatar fight, that was a waste of time. It was not super interesting. I didn't really care about it that much. But this lovely loop of this warlock searching a broken world desperately to find the soul stone of his mom and to sort of save his mom. And then his mom is like, "Did I save my son?" And it's like, "Yeah, it's me, your son. We did it. High five." Oh, it was good, man. I get a little emotional around anything with like parent-child stuff. I didn't expect to be so invested in an Eldar episode. I'm going to give this one a 7.5. I said it before and I'll say it again. This show is at its best when it's following a small cast of characters. And that's what we get in this one. In this episode, we're following a member of the Adeptus Mechanicus and their robot companion as they are searching for lost technology. If you don't know what the Adeptus Mechanicus is, it's basically a religious cult that worships the machine spirit. It believes that mechanisms, logic is divine and the flesh is weak. So over their lives, they remove parts of their body and replace them with robot parts. They are also very anti-AI, but the machine spirit is sort of like the weird loophole where it allows for a certain amount of magical sort of AI, but it's not AI. They're walking around this planet that has been devastated by a great war between the Imperium and the Orks. So it's just like a battlefield of devastation. She's talking to a robot and she's like, "Okay, there's gonna be some crazy archaeotech technology that we're gonna find there. And when we find it, we will gain its knowledge. And that knowledge is divine. So this quest is divine. So no matter what we do, we gotta get that. Any amount of sacrifice is worth it to get that thing. You with me, robot?" And the robot's like, "Beep, boop, 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 boop." And she's like, "Nice. I'm gonna unplug part of my arm backpack and plug it into you." All of her tech is so cool looking. This episode is maybe the first one where I enjoyed the animation. She has this backpack of like robot arm parts and it does all sorts of cool things. One, it's very analog in that it almost looks like she has video game cartridges in her like front chest piece, and this arm comes out and unplugs them and then plugs them into the robot when she wants to do different modes. She goes, "Aegis protocol," when he enters Aegis mode. And when she has her little gun and it runs out of ammo, a little robot arm comes out of her hand and unplugs the ammo and plugs in new ammo, and it goes like a makes a funny little video game noise. It's great. Anyway, as they're walking, she's like, "The chances of us encountering orcs is high. Get ready." Ooh, they fight some orcs, and some orcs come and they enter battle mode. The robot has his big gun and he's blasting. This is a powerful robot. He takes out a lot of orcs. But the robot gets injured. One of the orcs has a claw hand and he tears out part of the robot's leg. And after the fight, the tech priest is like, "Our chances of success have gone down, but I see something in the distance. It's light, it's promethium, and blah, 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 all of this technical stuff." And then she says, "It's definitely probably a campfire that people are chilling at. There's a human there. Let's go talk to him. Maybe he can help us." Probably not, but still maybe, so we're going. And then there's a human soldier, a survivor of the Great Battle, and at first, he's like, who are you? Oh, no, trouble, trouble, trouble. But eventually, he recognizes, wait, you're the Adeptus Mechanicus, we're on the same side. Oh, how's it going? What's good? And she's like, beep boop technology talk, approximations. The humans have decided we can declare victory on this planet, beep boop technology talk. And he's like, wait a minute, does that mean we won? Affirmative. And he's like, yes, we won. Now we just gotta hang out and wait till everybody comes and picks us up. And she's like, sorry, dude. Logically, we decided we won, but then no one's coming back and everybody left. And he's like, wait, there's still orcs here. Like, what's going on? Wait, we're stuck? And she's like, yeah, they did the math. And logically, this is enough of a victory that they don't need to do anything else. Logic prevails. And he's like, okay, well, so what are you doing here? And she's like, we're looking for this super important lost archaeotech. And he's like, okay, but how important? And she's like, you don't understand. This is super important. It's regenerative metal. This is going to be like the biggest thing we find, the greatest unlock of lost technology. This is going to change lives. It's going to win wars. Any sacrifice of life or flesh or anything is worth it to get this tech. And he's like, whoa. So why are you telling me all of this? And she's like, in payment, because secretly I've been scanning you this whole conversation and not really having a conversation, but scanning all of your augments. And now I'm going to cut you open and use them to fix my robot because I need my robot to survive. Oh, also, there's a part earlier where she's like, oh, our chances of success are very low. And the robot goes, blip, 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 blip. And she's like, don't be so optimistic. So there's a little bit of a vibe of the robot has like a lot more personality than she does. When they're talking, the robot will go, blip, 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 and she's like, hope is not as important as logic, you silly machine spirit. Now let's go. I feel like the robot is like trying to be R2-D2. A little bit. Just a little bit. Classic machine spirit, but not AI. Now that the robot is a little fixed up, they keep going to the archaeotech thing, and they find the building where it is, and there's a big fight in the front of the building, and they're all fighting. More orcs are coming. She takes a special plug out, and she goes, kill protocol. Name of the episode, plugs it into the robot, and it goes like, end of Iron Giant mode, and starts really going to war. And then she continues on the path, and then she finds the lost technology, and she's like, oh, wow, it's so cool. It's such a good lost technology. It's going to be so special. But she looks back, and her robot is getting the snot kicked out of it, and it gets its head cut off, and it falls down, and its last moment, it like takes an orc and smashes it, and then she runs up to it, and she is clearly upset. She's like, the machine spirit, cry! In a way, it's like, oh, you haven't been upset before, you emotions, secretly having emotions. Ooh, you secretly have emotions. She takes the technology, and you see her scanning it, and remember that tech that they're looking for is metal regeneration stuff. And she does a little, you can see her mind like running the stats on what'll happen if she uses it on the dead robot. It says outcome unknown, and she doesn't care. She decides to use it. And it's the first time she is going against like the logic and going into hope, and then obviously the machine rebuilds and is super intense, and you can see it looks at her and goes like and it's asking something, and she basically is like, if I am going to be able to find more lost technology, which there is a chance there is, I can't do it alone, so I need you. So it's okay that we did this here. Now, follow me, and we're going to go. At first, it was like, okay, I kind of get it. It's showing that, like, even the machine spirit worshipping admechs, they still will occasionally make choices in that need of community and companionship. But then I was also thinking about it, and I was like, it's actually like authoritarian extremist, because what it also is showing that this extreme zealot that will go to any length to do what they need to do won't actually do that if the push comes to shove in terms of it going against what they want. And I'm going to justify every decision I make based on this ideology. But then, even if I go against the ideology by taking this tech that they say at the very beginning, any sacrifice is worth getting this back to the boys on Mars. Any sacrifice. And at the end, she uses that same sort of flawed logic to justify going against the thing that she said at the beginning, which to me is a good little like microcosm of double speak logic that you find in a lot of extremist, fascist-y kind of stuff. This is an episode that made me think. Even just the way that she talked about how they won the war, and it took the soldier a couple minutes to like even understand that she was saying that they won because of how alien the way that they thought and communicated were. I'm giving this one an 8. I think the highest rated episode so far. I might sit, but Cadia Stands. Episode 8. Cadia Stands. In this episode, we are seeing, you guessed it, a battlefield. It's very World War I vibes, lots of big trenches and people shooting off into the distance and death everywhere. And we learn that we are watching folks try to hold off the Tyranid, the bug aliens. They're like the Zerg, or rather the Zerg are like them, and then they're like the Zerg again. Spiky, insectoid, hive mind things. They're the sort of aliens that you really, really like when you first get into Warhammer, and then once you realize they're not really characters, they're still fun as like an element of the story or like a challenge to overcome, but they're also largely very uninteresting as individuals, because that's sort of their whole shtick, is that they don't really have any element of individuality. And we're following a guy who we're gonna call Newbie, because he's a noob. He seems unprepared for battle and war and is very scared and skittish, but he's also a messenger, and he's got to get a message to some up-in-charge military person. He gives them the message, and then that person's sidekick gets exploded by a weird jellyfish thing, and the person's like, oh, gross, sludge on me. All right, anyway, guys, let's get back to business. By the way, you messenger here, go return my message, and you, Cadian soldier, get this guy alive to return the message. And then the real story begins as we see this Cadian soldier bring this greenhorn through horrors of battle to get the message in. The fact that it's a Cadian matters quite a bit, because in the Warhammer lore, Cadia is a planet that was totally destroyed, shattered in combat. And the Cadian soldiers, they were fighting against the aliens and the cultists and all the scary things after the planet shattered. Like, literally, they were still firing their las rifles as they were starting to suffocate as the atmosphere depleted, or they started to float away because chunks of the planet were drifting off into the warp. Pretty intense dudes, and the phrase Cadia Stands is emblematic of their whole vibe. Spoilers, it's what the whole episode is about. They start going through the battlefield, and you see all these little vignettes that they pass through. They see a guy getting eaten alive by these little micro Tyranids. The Cadian takes him out, and she's like, anyone would do the same for me. Noob is like, this is intense. And then they see a really big Tyranid alien and all these soldiers working together, and like half of them dying, but eventually taking it out. And it's like, oh, this is really intense. And as they're walking, there's like a little montage of you seeing this messenger's face, the noob, as he sort of is getting dirtied and bloodied as they continue to make it from little moment to little moment. Eventually they get to a part where there's just a bunch of dead bodies, and they're walking, and the Cadian is like, shh, be quiet. Don't talk too much. And he's just like, there's so much death here. Oh my goodness, I didn't know war was so bad. And I wanted to reach through the screen and be like, shut the fuck up. She just said be quiet. You can whisper your concerns and your thoughts. You don't need to yell them. The guy has very little situational awareness. But he did notice that there seemed like there was a living person in one of those piles. And he's like, we have to get them out. And she's like, oh, okay, what are we doing here? And as they start to pull the soldier up, the soldier just keeps saying, where's my gun? And he's all bloody, he's missing an eye, and he's like spitting up blood as he's talking. Newbie's like, we're gonna help you. And he's just like, give me my gun. The Cadian is grabs a gun, gives it to him, and then she looks to Newbie and she's like, let's get him set up on a trench. And he's like, he can't do anything. He's look at him, he's half dead. And she's like, as long as he can hold a gun and has a breath, his duty is not done. It's like, okay. They set him up on the trench, and as he's like coughing blood, and they help him literally put his hand on the trigger. Cadia Stands. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention that happens throughout this episode is that somebody looks at this guy as he like Mr. Magoo's through a pile of mud, and they're like, get up. Here, everyone stands. At first, it's like, jeez Louise. But now you're starting to realize, okay, it's not just literally get up, but it's also like, get up. Eventually, they find themselves in a big firefight, and it gets hectic, and the Cadian is maybe gonna get killed. The Tyranid's trying to bite her and stuff, and the noob, for the first time, uses a rifle and takes out one of the aliens. And he is immediately like, I am now a super intense looking warrior guy. And it's a little funny how quick that transition is from him being like, to being like, whoo, let's run really cool with the rifle now. They run and they run and they run and they eventually get to the place where they're supposed to give the message. He's so excited, we're gonna be the messengers. He doesn't notice there's another one of those explodey jellyfish. She pushes him out of the way. She ends up getting killed. And he's like, oh, I still have to give the message. And he goes and he gives the message, and there's a bunch of Admiral, generally people talking. They're like, oh, how do the different fronts go? Oh, the Vestige front will hold. Ah, the Clementine front will hold. What news of the Cadians? And as Noob is walking away, no longer a noob, maybe an intermediate, he hears them saying, the Cadians say they will stand. What does that mean? I don't know. Does standing mean the same as hold? I suppose so. And then as he's walking away, he's like, no, it doesn't. Because we all stand now. I think the fact that the message that he was sending was literally Cadia Stands was too much. I didn't love that. It felt like too on the nose. And also it felt like it wasn't really that important a message to get across. There's not actually any important information there. If you have any understanding of the culture of Cadian soldiers, which I'm assuming that people that live in Warhammer 40k that are fighting alongside Cadians do, they would know that the Cadians would be like, Cadia Stands, we're going to fight till the end no matter what. So it felt a little bit silly that the message didn't have any relevant information that seemed super important. It was more like, guys, don't forget, we feel the way that we always feel. There were moments of action that looked really cool, and then there were a lot of moments of action that looked very stilted. And every time there's a moment of action that looks very stilted for me, I'm just completely pulled out, and I'm just like, ugh, okay. I'm going to say this one was a little underwhelming, so I'm going to give it a 6. Cadia Stands. Episode 9, Artefacts. I really liked this episode. This episode, we're following the Black Legion, which are some Space Marines that turned to chaos during the Horus Heresy. In fact, they were the Space Marines that were just under Horus, and they're led by Abaddon the Despoiler, and they're just like super evil, super chaos. They're so chaos that they don't worship a specific chaos god, they worship this idea of unified chaos, meaning they will work with any and all chaos towards greater chaos, and they just drip with vibe. It's so much fun. And what makes it even more fun is that they're fighting Necrons, and Chaos versus Xenos is just great. It's just like, here's one type of cartoon crazy character versus another type of cartoon crazy character. We start off, we see a bunch of these Chaos Space Marines fighting Necrons, being like, you're stupid robots, and the Necrons being like, we are not stupid robots. They go to take out one of the leaders, and the leader's like, wait, if you don't kill me, I will tell you where you can get something really cool. Because the Necrons, if you didn't know, they know about all sorts of really cool old stuff. They're basically ancient Egypt Terminators, sort of mixed with Sleeping Beauty, minus the Prince Charming part. And also zombies, if you throw zombies in there too. So this one Necron is like, I know where there is an object that can get you to the webway. And the webway is how you can like teleport around the universe. So they're like, dude, if we could get that, that would be sick. And other ones are like, don't trust this guy. And they're like, let's just kill this guy. And other ones are like, no, man, he might have some good stuff. They start arguing. You hear a voice that's like, let him speak. And if all of the normal Chaos Marines sound kind of like this, he sounds kind of like this. And it is Abaddon, the Despoiler. And the drip, the vibe, oh, it's excellent. He looks really cool. So anyway, they listen to the Necron. He's like, here is the key. Now, let me go. And Abaddon's like, you get what you get and you don't get upset. And shoots him dead. He then turns to the Black Legion Chaos Marines. Go check that out. I'm gonna go do Abaddon stuff. And he walks off and they're like, oh, we gotta do that. And they fly off onto mission. Here we get a lot more of the Chaos Space Marines arguing amongst themselves over like, this is totally a trap. Oh, it's definitely not a trap. Oh, you're a trap. Listen, we gotta be smart. We gotta be bold. And it's very fun. They speak with the same sort of charisma as the Decepticons. And because they're all evil and crazy, instead of having like an astropath and a little wise man, they have this crazy multi-eyed lady with a tube in her nose, and she's like, I can do some sightseeing. And then there's this guy that's just like, he's been Hellraisered. He's just got hooks and stuff hanging off of him, and he doesn't have legs, he's just a torso. He's like over a pit, and he's like, oh. And I think it's the Chaos Gods speaking through him, and it's like, you should do this if you want, but know that we cannot help you. And it's all just very, dark. It's very grim and dark. And I think it's because they all just sounded so, it's like, we're really evil. We're not even just regular evil. We're like, evil. So this tech is supposed to be on some abandoned Drukhari Eldar ship cluster, like a ship graveyard. Because they're Chaos Space Marines and they do weird magic, instead of them like flying on, they just teleport onto the ship, which is fun. And almost immediately upon landing on the ship, which they are certain there's no life on, they get attacked by a bunch of Dark Eldar, the Drukhari. And the Drukhari are like the Space Elves from the earlier episode, except they're like the Hellraiser Space Elves, or the BDSM Space Elves. And they attack and they're like, ooh, look at us with our leather. And the evil Space Marines take them out. As they move forward through the ship, they see this weird visage of like a ghostly Necron with a big fun hat and a staff, and it disappears. And they're like, okay, are you sure this isn't a trap or something? Because this is weird. Like, it doesn't matter, we must go forward. We must find this artifact. There's another weird thing where there's like a bunch of Drukhari manifest as ghosts and then take physical form, and they all start fighting together. And as they're fighting, they're making their way through the ship until they get to this place where they see the artifact. And one of the Chaos Space Marines is like, I'm gonna get the artifact. And as he goes and touches it, another one's like, wait, don't do that. And he gets like an inch away from touching it, and then everything freezes. And then you hear the sound, ka-dunk, 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 of metal on stone as a Necron appears, flickering in form until it takes its true form, which I'm 99% sure is Trazyn the Collector, who's a very fun Necron character. When he appears, he starts casually talking to the Space Marines, and it's like, oh, you guys got really close this time. Like, that was a really good job. And he's also very charismatic, very colorful in the way that he speaks. And the evil Space Marine you can see is frozen, but is like, I'm gonna crash. And then he unfreezes the evil Space Marine for a second, just enough time for the evil Space Marine to pull out his blaster and take a shot, and then he freezes him again, and as the bullet freezes, he picks up the bullet in his hand and looks at it, and then crushes it, and it's just like the most mic drop moment of like, oh, you have no power here, buddy. And he's like, you know, infinite creatures, we used to think about war and stuff like that, but after a while you just kind of get bored, and so, you know, now these days I collect stuff. Isn't that cool? That artifact, it's real, you almost got it, but to be fair, I just kind of use it for bait, because I like to collect exciting things, whether that's monsters or people or events, and I love this little event of you and the Drukhari fighting and racing to get to the ancient object, and I just trapped it in a little time labyrinth. By the way, that's what this whole thing is. It's a time labyrinth. Pretty cool, right? And the evil Space Marine's like, you're gonna let us out of this prison. And he's like, oh, no, you're not a prisoner here. This thing's on a time loop. It's different every time, but it keeps happening, not because I keep making it happen, but because you keep deciding to go investigate this artifact. And I just get to keep the little memory of it, / you in this weird little time video show I can watch forever and ever. And then we see this zoom out, and it is Trazyn holding that moment in this weird little time cube thing, and there's the zoom out, sort of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you see the Ark of the Covenant being put amongst the boxes and boxes, and you just see all of the crazy cool stuff that Trazyn has collected, and he's just like, I love collecting stuff. You guys are cool. This might be my favorite episode so far. It was fun. All of the characters were so colorful and silly and extreme. It had like a kind of twist Twilight Zone ending to it. I'm gonna give this one an 8.5. Artifact. It is the next day again, and we are on to episode 10, Plague Song. In this episode, we follow some Plague Marines, which are Chaos Marines that follow Papa Nurgle, the demon god, the Chaos Lord of pestilence and disease and entropy, but also growth. We see one Plague Marine, I'm gonna call him Wizard, and he's picking up a mushroom and it's turning to ash. And he's gross, but he's sad, and he looks upon this massive field that's burning and laments how it used to be this great glorious jungle of pestilence and plague and disease. And when they show it, I'm gonna be honest, yes, all of the creatures in it look kind of monstrous, and yes, I am colorblind, so maybe the colors being kind of desiccated didn't bother me as much, but I thought it looked pretty nice too. The wizard plague marine is sort of yelling at these other plague marines, and he's like, you guys aren't doing a good job, and the leader of those plague marines is like, really? You want to go? You want to friggin' go? And he's like, yeah, dude. And the plague marine is like, yeah, well, you don't have Papa Nurgle's blessing. And then the wizard plague marine is like, yeah, I do, look. And you see that there's this little demon that's like, hee, I'm a little gross Nurgle demon. He then blasts that plague marine with some crazy energy, and his body starts to change and grow, and he spouts like spikes and horns and bubbling pustules and a weird mouth that kind of like eats his own head, and it is awesome. The animation in this episode in general is great. Probably the best part. The plot is almost irrelevant here. There is a plot and it's fine, but where this episode really shines is all of the gross body horror. After the main Plague Marine gets turned into a crazy monster, Wizard Plague Marine looks at the others and is like, what's going on? You guys gonna prove yourself to me or what? I'm blasting you with crazy plague magic, and if you survive, you get to survive. Two of them don't survive. But the third one, he kind of gets like a Pokemon Digimon upgrade. His armor splits at the center and becomes a giant crazy mouth. He's holding a scythe and it like grows extra spikes. Wizard is like, nice, you're my harbinger now. Go team, kapoosh. High five. We then cut to them on the Plague Marine battleship, spaceship, which is so funny because it's basically exactly the same as the Space Marine one, except all the screens are a sickly green and have slime on the sides. Tell me those screens are totally different. Tell me they're not just putting a little green sickly filter over their screens and they're like, now our ship is ready to be Plague Marine ship. They're in this spaceship and they leap out of warp space and they're like, we're in real space. And when they look around, they see an Imperial armada. Everyone's like, yo, boss, we're not gonna make it through that armada. Boss is like, okay, you die now. The Harbinger, the Space Marine that survived the process, steps forward and he's like, oh, boss, I know you just killed that guy, but we aren't actually gonna make it through. The boss is like, buddy, you don't know what I know. Time is on our side, friendo. I will say, the Harbinger, whose name is Cephas, I think? Don't know, I should check, but I'm not going to. You kind of feel bad for him. You're a big scary monster, but you're also just in a lot of pain and really scared, poor guy. The wizard looks to the group and he's like, guys, down there is the Astropath station, and we are gonna wreck shit up. And as they start to fly forward, all of the Imperial battleships that are around them immediately start to like desiccate and decay and crumble and fall apart as they drive through them. And everyone's like, whoa, this is crazy. And he's like, time is a flat circle. Because the Astropaths send messages through the warp to far distant places in space, and then also receive messages. But it's wonky sometimes. Sometimes you're getting an answer to a message before you ask a question. You know, timey-wimey, loopy-doopy situations. And the Plague Man, the Wizard of Plague, knows this. Spoilers. They then get to this big door that guards the Astropaths, and everyone's like, oh man, how are we gonna get through this door? Like, we could blow it up, but then it's gonna kill all this lovely plague in here. We don't want to do that. The little Nurgle demon is like, I can do it. I just need 7 hours to do 7 little rituals. He starts carving with a little bone into the door, like giggling, and every time he carves into the door, Cephas, the Harbinger, the Plague Marine that got changed at the beginning, his armor like tears apart, and like new pustules burst out of him, and like his face turns into more tentacles, and every one of these seals, he's just getting more tormented and torn apart. It's 7 seals, and it's 7 hours, so he's just having 7 hours of no fun time. At the end of that 7 hours, he kind of just looks like a crazy... He almost looks like the Thing at the end of the Thing when it's having a hard time keeping a specific form. Then he just explodes. Bye, Harbinger. The door opens, and we see all the Astropaths. Ooh. Wizard Plague Marine takes his friggin' the guy that he turned into a monster at the very beginning, and is like, I'll go into that! And he throws him into it and infects all the Astropaths and starts sending plague through their psionic messages to the future, to the past, a plague of mind and madness. The episode ends with us seeing a flashback, technically a flashback, in all of the Imperial armadas, the plague starting to spread and them starting to decay and turn into crazy monsters and stuff from within. Plot-wise, it was whatever. It was sort of a nothing burger. But this episode was a lot of fun. The animation was great. Everything was gross and cool, and the amount of times that people turned into monsters, turned into different monsters, and limbs split open into mouths and tendrils and stuff, it was just, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. If you like body horror, you're gonna really enjoy this episode. So I'm probably gonna give this episode a solid 7. Episode 11. Double or Nothing. This one was great. Where do we start? Well, first of all, this episode doesn't take place in Warhammer 40k. This episode takes place in Warhammer Fantasy, which I know almost nothing about. So if you were frustrated with my lack of knowledge for the last videos, just this one, you're gonna be more frustrated because everything in this for me was like, all right, whatever, but it didn't matter because of the best main character in any Warhammer show yet so far. Hamilcar, Bear Eater. And I remembered his name because he says it a lot. This guy, he's the best. Okay, there is a massive orc war camp outside of a city, and there are these Spacemarine type fantasy characters. They're called Celestial Knights? Stormlight Knights? Stormcast? They're like thunder magic space marines, is what my guess is. And they're like, oh, what are we gonna do? All these orcs seem like there's so much trouble. And then this other one shows up and he's like, ha ha, do not worry. I shall deal with this little problem of yours. By the way, I'm casually eating an apple and a little bit goofy. They all just look at him and then look at each other and then look at him. And it's almost like those moments that would happen in The Office where Dwight does something ridiculous and Jim kind of does a side eye to the camera. And they're like, oh, this guy's crazy. And he's like, do not worry, I shall deal with this. Huzzah! And he walks down to the orc camp by himself. The other Storm Knight, Celestial Warrior, Thunderfolk look at each other and they're like, oh, is this a good idea? Worst case scenario, he dies. When he gets to the Orc war camp, these orcs are like, oh, we're gonna smash you. And he's like, haha, I have no time to talk. I must speak to your boss. They're like, you can't go in. And he goes, tally-ho! And he just walks past them. And the orcs look basically as befuddled as the Space Marines, and they're just like, oh, what do we do? So they start like following him through the camp until they lead him to the war boss. The war boss is like, okay, I'm just gonna smash you, you little stupid guy. And Hamilcar says, haha, but how about this? Instead of you just smashing me, what if we do a test of strength? And if you beat me, I shall tell everyone I know that you are the most intense, scariest orc I ever fought. Eh? And he uses the orc logic that we kind of learned about in an earlier episode, where he basically is like, look, if you take that city, sure, you're gonna be more powerful or whatever, but if people know that you defeated me, I'm a real enemy. I'm a real threat. The orc war boss agrees, and he sends some of his best warriors to fight the Storm Knight. One of them's a little guy, the Storm Knight just kills immediately, but the other one is a lot bigger and kind of starts beating the Storm Knight up. As soon as he knocks the Storm Knight down, Hamilcar just goes, I yield, you win. And again, the orcs are kind of just confused. They're like, what? It's over? And Hamilcar's like, yes, you win, but what if we go double or nothing? If you win, I will not just tell everyone you're the greatest orc I ever encountered, but the greatest orc in all of Gur. And I'm assuming Gur is like the planet or the continent, and you get to keep my cool little griffin dog thing. And the orc war boss is like, oh, good deal, let's go. Fight more of my guys. And then he sends in some even bigger orcs. The Storm Knight starts fighting them, and again, falls, and again just goes, oh, I yield, I yield. The orc war boss is like, oh, okay, cool, I win. And he's like, but wait, what if we go double or nothing? And the orc war boss is like, what? What else you got for me, bud? And Hamilcar is like, what if I tell everyone that not only are you the best warrior in the world and you get my dog, but you also get my super badass armor. Ooh. The orc war boss is basically like, okay, here, go fight him, big dog. And then a big dog comes, smashes him, and he immediately just goes again, I yield. Throughout this, we're also getting cuts to the other Celestial Storm Knight guys watching from the cliffside. And they're like, how's he doing? Well, he's still alive. Everyone is confused, and it's a lovely, lovely thing. After the big dog smashes Hamilcar's again like, I yield, but what about double or nothing? Or Warboss is like, okay, I'm done. I can't count that high. I'm just gonna smash you now. But wait, how about this? If you win this time, I shall give you the secret of the Storm Knights, the power of Sigmar. I will teach you how to reforge your soldiers. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming that it either means bring people back to life that have been slain in battle, or I think more likely what it means is that is the language they use for the process of turning people into their version of Space Marines. He goes on to say, imagine you with an army of Thunder Warrior Orks. The Orc seems very fascinated by this idea. Oh, okay, fine, let's do it. Hamilcar is like, okay, but we have to be very careful with this because I can only give it to someone who vanquishes me in combat, so I have to fight you. The big orc jumps down, yo, let's freaking go, dog. Hamilcar is like, aha, I'm actually not bad at fighting, and pretty quickly breaks the orc's arm and smashes him to the ground, and everyone starts freaking out. There's like storms above. Hamilcar is like, aha, I'm totally going to beat you now. And then a lightning bolt comes out of the sky and crashes into the orc warboss, eviscerating him. Another moment that I was like, I don't exactly understand what's going on. So I'm assuming in Age of Sigmar, these Storm Knight Space Marine adjacent characters have magic thunder sky powers. I don't know, but it was cool. Afterwards, he climbs the war boss's chair and just starts talking about how uncomfortable it is. All these other orcs walk up and he's like, well, it appears I'm your leader now. But also, this chair is uncomfortable. It's not for me. So, same offer. Whoever can beat me in combat can get the super powerful reforging thing. But I'm only gonna pick one of you, so decide amongst yourselves. I'll be back. And he leaves. All the orcs immediately are like, I want the power, and I want the power. So the orcs just start fighting each other. He walks back up the cliff as you see the orc war camp start destroying itself, and he sees the Storm Knights that we're watching from the cliffside, and he's like, let them fight until morning and then clear the rest out. I'm Hamilcar, the Bear Eater. And all of the Space Marines are just like, doop-a-doop-a-doop, I'm off to do more adventures, and he walks off. Oh, it's so fun. It's so funny. Is this what Age of Sigmar is? Is Age of Sigmar full of characters that are this silly? Favorite episode by far. Probably the first episode that I watched thinking I would watch that again. And I know I explained the plot of what happened, but I do want to reiterate the main character, Hamilcar, the Bear Eater, is genuinely funny. I'm giving this one a 9. Boom! Episode 12, Monsters. This episode also seems to take place in Warhammer Fantasy. We're following a barbarian-style clan. There's the chieftain, there's his brother, and then there's the brother's daughter, and then there's the little scrawny guy. They're in a cave, they're talking about, oh, the times have been hard. They're talking about how there's rumors that people have been going missing, and then we see that they have some prisoners that are city folk. The prisoners start yelling at them, you guys are demon worshippers, this is crazy, we should be on the same team. The chieftain is like, we'll do what we need to do. And the city folk kind of look like priests or monks. You guys are demon worshippers. And we see some stuff in the episode that makes you go like, oh, shoot, they might be demon worshippers. There's this big crazy crystal with these weird runes written around it. Demon stuff, probably. But the way the chieftain talks, he doesn't seem crazy or manic. He seems kind of reasonable. And they're eating this gristle, and they're complaining because the chieftain isn't letting them eat this giant hog he's been carrying around. This is a sacrifice for the gods. Okay, fine, but our tummies are grumbling. The prisoners try to escape, they kill all the prisoners, and the chieftain goes to the scrawny guy, alright, you do watch. We're going to take a nap. And as they're sleeping, there's a weird little shadow of a demon thing for a second. But then they get woken up. It turns out those city folk soldiers are marching on them, and they gotta make a run for it. The daughter's like, where's scrawny guy? And everyone else is like, oh, he's on his own. He was terrible at watch anyway. Let's get out of here. They also describe the people that are coming for them as the Storm Warriors, which is the same thing that the last guy was. Hamilcar, the Bear Hunter. He was a storm something. I know a lot about Warhammer Fantasy. Anyway, the barbarian folk decide they're gonna head for the woods, and the chieftain is still carrying that giant boar, and it's starting to like rot, and there's flies around it. Everyone's like, dude, and he's like, we need it for the sacrifice. Foreshadowing? As they're riding, they all make these blood oaths where they hold a pendant and cut their hand, and I thought some crazy cool magic was gonna happen, but nah. They just make their oath. Once they get into the woods, surprise! The storm soldiers were already there, and they have this crazy giant encampment that's like a spider turret robot thing that's like a mix between a trebuchet and the last boss from Wild Wild West. They start fighting, and there's a big fight scene, and they're fighting, and for a big fight scene, pretty cool looking. And I think the animation in this show is getting better as it goes on, or I'm just getting more accustomed to it. The three main characters of chieftain, brother, and daughter split up and start doing their own thing, and daughter is gonna get into this big one-on-one battle with the Storm Warrior boss, and we're like, oh, this looks intense. And then we see the brother of the chieftain come upon the chieftain in the woods, and the chieftain has that body of the boar, and he's doing a strange dark prayer ritual, and as he cuts it open, we see inside it was the scrawny guy that had gone missing. And you see this crazy Wendigo style demon monster with a part of a skull and weird tendrils and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, this looks sweet, thanks dude. And at this moment, the brother is like, what have you done? What are you doing? You've been taking people this whole time. And I forgot that little part at the beginning where they said people have been going missing. But yeah, they have, because this guy has been secretly making human sacrifices to crazy demons. And that's why the whole tribe was like, boo, we're super cool and fairly reasonable. But secretly they were falling to chaos. And the brother's like, you're crazy, why did you do this? The chieftain is like, because we have to do what we have to do. Join me, brother. And the brother's like, no, brother, I walk my own path. And at that, the demon gets mad and starts going crazy. And the first thing it does is slam the chieftain up against the wall. And then the brother and the demon start fighting. Cha-cha-cha-cha, demon fight, demon fight, demon fight. And just when it seems like the brother's about to lose, an arrow comes out of nowhere and blasts the demon in the head. Remember daughter? Turns out she won her fight, and now she's back to help. Once the demon is felled, the brother looks to the chieftain, who's still alive and kind of like, I'm not doing too well. The daughter's like, leave him alone. And the brother's like, I have to get him, daughter. I have to end this. And she's like, no, you don't. And he's like, yes, I do. And then it cuts. We don't see what happens, but we do see the brother and daughter returning to the tribe, but the chieftain, not so much. And the brother has the head of the demon, and he holds it up and he's like, I am the bane of demons. We are a monster hunting tribe now. We're making a new oath. That oath is we're gonna kill everything that's a monster forever. And he slams his axe down. It's like, I make this oath to the gods. We can see the blade of the axe starting to corrupt and change color, which I think implies that he is going his own path, but is also leading his tribe just as much into the corruption of chaos as the original chieftain was. This was another pretty fun one. I enjoyed all the characters. I liked the weird surprise that he'd been making sacrifices of people the whole time. I liked the ending that it's like, oh, you think you beat corruption, but really you just joined it through another pathway. That's kind of fun too. 7.5 or an 8. Episode 13, A New Life. This episode starts in a hive city where there's a curfew happening. You hear over Vox speakers, everyone must be in their house or you will be eliminated. Soldiers are running around, and we see a family that has a baby. The family's like, whoa, we have to, I'm so scared. And the dad runs in and he's like, no, you guys don't understand. There's about to be an invasion. We gotta get out of here or we are not gonna survive. They're looking out the window and hearing people get shot and freaking out. Like, we're gonna do it. Don't worry. I'm the dad. And I made friends with one of the guys and they're gonna help us. The grandma's like, I'm too old to go. And they're like, oh, Granny, we'll miss you. Say goodbye to the baby. We love you. We're out of here. They sneak past some soldiers and some tanks and stuff and find themselves at a barricade where there's a group of protesters that are like, we gotta get through. Let us through. The people get mowed down by soldiers. And at one point, you see sort of in the background, semi-invisible Tyranid looking thing looking down at the family. The family has to find some other way around the barricade. And you see in the sky these massive Tyranid bioships coming down. Ooh. They get to another barricade where there's another protest happening, but this time, when all the chaos breaks out, they actually use that chaos to run past and to sneak into the sewers. But there's some soldiers that saw that they were trying to get into the sewers and are now tracking them, and as they're making their way, they hear the soldiers start fighting a Tyranid that leaps down and starts fighting the soldiers, so they have a moment of reprieve and keep on going. I think they get to the barricade they're supposed to get to when they peek out, and it is all hell breaking loose above. There's giant Tyranid plane type creatures, there's Tyranid with weird bio guns, there's Tyranid, those mushroom explodey guys from the earlier episode, they're there. They use the chaos of the big battle to get to the barricade, and Dad is like, "Hey, buddy, it's me, you know me." And the guy's like, "Oh, I do know you, come on, get in here." And they're about to get put on a ship when a commissar comes out and is like, "What are these guys doing here? That ship's supposed to be for folks that are part of the priesthood. Those don't look like priestly folk. Ooh, trouble." And the guard that's helping them is like, "Run!" And he clicks a button and makes all these explosions happen and starts fighting the commissar. And it made me think, why did he just have a button that made so many explosions? So are they getting helped by like rebellion people? That's what I thought, and I was kind of right. Because the family then gets onto the ship, and as the ship is taken off, there's crazy chaos below, and you see all of these priests and stuff. There's like a cleric guy looking down at a scared monk, and he's like, "Don't be scared, brother. We are in the Emperor's protection now." The family is just like freaked out and holding their baby, but then the mom's hood lifts up a little bit, and we see a weird, wrinkly thing. Worf. Worf was the guy's name from Star Trek. He has a wrinkly thing too. Well, they had wrinkly things. And then you see all of these flashbacks to the events that happened earlier in the episode. We see the place where they entered the sewers had some unusual markings and arrows around it. We see that riot that they used to get through was caused by other people with weird forehead things. We see the flashback to them holding the baby up to the grandma to say goodbye, and in the mirror, the baby's cute little hand is a claw. And then we see the monk back on the ship freaking out because the lady's got a weird alien forehead, but then the priest puts a injection in him and is like, "Don't worry, brother, a new life. We are all a new life." And then you see everyone on the ship has that weird forehead thing, and then the baby is revealed, and it's actually a weird little Tyranid baby, and it goes, "Ah, Tyranid baby!" Because it turns out the new life they were talking about was this secret Tyranid cult all along. And that crazy quarantine that was happening at the beginning was probably because the whole planet was infested by this Tyranid cult and they didn't even realize it. Pretty good episode. The ones that have the little Twilight Zone-y twists, when they land, they're great. And that one, I think, landed 85%. I think they could have gone further with showing clues of them getting help from the Tyranids, like a little bit more, or maybe even just in the flashbacks, how some of those Tyranid escapes weren't them narrowly escaping Tyranids, it was Tyranids fighting things around them so they could escape. It did suffer a little bit from the quality of the animation shifting pretty dramatically between when you're just watching the characters walk around versus like these big cityscape battles, and for better or worse, that always just takes me out. The whole episode itself gets probably a 7, but because of the fun little twist ending, it bumps it up to a 7.58-ish. But the episode itself is mostly fine. Episode 14, Undercity. Another Warhammer fantasy episode, and this might be hard to hear, but so far, the Warhammer Fantasy episodes have been consistently better than the Warhammer 40k episodes. I don't know who to talk to about that. I don't know how to feel about that, but this episode continues that trend. The first thing we see is some thieves running around in the dark fantasy city, and then whoop, something getting them in the night, and a bunch of missing person posters, including one of that thief. We're in a tavern, and we're following a guy with a key sword, or a sword with a key on it. He's a witch hunter, and he sees a soldier, and he's like, "Hey, you remember me?" And the soldier's like, "We don't work together anymore." And he's like, "Yeah, well, maybe we do." And the soldier's like, "Poof." And the witch hunter's like, "Yeah, well, you know how all those people are missing? We're gonna find one of them." And the soldier's like, "Why? What do you care?" He's like, "I don't, but I work for the High Arbiter, and one of those missing people is his cousin's kid. So, you know, we gotta do it." And the soldier's like, you'll work with them, but you won't not work with my ex-girlfriend? Forget you! And that's a confusing sentiment when I said it out loud, but it also was a confusing sentiment when the soldier said it also. And the witch hunter's like, but I need your help. Come on, help me out. Oh, fine, I'll help you out. One last time. They're like, we gotta go talk to this guy that knows the rat folk, because I think it's the rat folk. They start chasing that guy around the city. And eventually, they capture him, and he's like, oh, I don't have the kid. I don't even know anything, and you can't make me talk, because bad things will happen if I do. And then his veins start to, like, pop and go crazy, and he jumps off a bridge into, like, the mist below. Oh boy, now we gotta go into the sewers. We cut to them at the bottom of that bridge, looking through the water, and they've got a new companion. The ex-girlfriend that the witch hunter won't not work with, who's a thief and has a weird little magic skull. Probably a Warhammer fantasy reference that I don't understand. Eventually, they find the body of the guy that jumped off, and he's got a strange sewer key to a very specific sewer gate. And they're like, aha, a clue. We shall go and open this gate. And they make their way to that sewer gate. Once they're in, surprise, rat folk attack, or Skaven, and there's a lot of them. And this is a very cool fight scene. The witch hunter's throwing these gas bombs, and the soldier's swinging around his sword, and the thief's doing all sorts of little jump, pa-choo stuff, and they work together to escape as the swarm of Skaven gets bigger and more overwhelming. Unfortunately, they're two henchmen that I completely forgot to reference before, but they were there the whole time. They got some cool kills in that scene too, but they got left behind and eaten by rat people. Sorry. When they do get out of the sewers, they're like, wait a minute. Those rat folk weren't chasing us. They were running from something. And the witch hunter's like, wait a minute. Bodies missing. Weird blood curse stuff. I know who the real villain is. And at this point, I did not. But he did. They're suddenly at a door. A big old demon-looking door with all these skeletons around. And the skeletons, as skeletons are often wont to do, came to life and started fighting. The thief/ex-girlfriend is trying to open the lock to the demon door as they're fighting the skeletons, but the fight's not going super well. She pulls out her little skull and she's like, I need your help! And the skull turns into like a ghost lady and she's like, oh, you always need my help. And then she jumps into the door and opens it with her ghost magic powers. Pretty cool. Once the door is open and they make their way inside, all the skeletons get stuck on the other side, and they see this massive tomb-looking space where there's people, all the people that have been missing, hanging from the ceiling, their blood being drained into these massive braziers all over the room. Vampires! That's who it was. Surprise! One of the people that's missing is not hanging up. They're sort of hidden in the corner. And it's the boy, the cousin of the Arbiter. And they're like, we found you, boy! Mission accomplished! And the boy slowly looks up and turns out he was turned into a vampire. And big vampire fight happens as a bunch of other vampires swoop in. The witch hunters throwing sun bombs. The soldiers fighting vampires off, and eventually thief/ex-girlfriend stabs and kills the young vampire boy. And then all the vampires run away. She runs away too. And that is not done super well. Like, literally the next moment, you just see the witch hunter and the soldier guy, and they're like, where'd she go? She's like, oh, she ran away. She always runs away. I didn't even notice that. It almost felt like they forgot to continue to animate her in the rest of the cartoon, so they just threw in some lines about how she just disappeared, because there's no moment where we see her deciding to turn and run away. She's just, boop, gone. Classic ex-girlfriend thief, I guess. The skeletons break in, and then witch hunter and soldier escape back into the sewers, and they have a nice little moment where they're like, oh, you know, I was really in the mire, and you pulled me out. Thanks, bud. And they have like a high five, and they're best friends forever. And then we see them back at the tavern, and you know who walks in? Some of those big Storm Knight warriors, the sort of Space Marines, I'm assuming, of Warhammer Fantasy. And they're like, ooh, you guys did well, but your job is not over. It is only just beginning. And then they walk off into the night together to go hunt more vampires and be best friends. The mystery of what was taking the people and the revelation that it was vampires was not done very well. It was sort of like, oh, we don't know. Okay, it's vampires. We now know. There wasn't a lot of tension or building up to that revelation. And when that revelation happened, it was kind of just like, okay. But the animation was solid. The characters were great. The dynamic between the witch hunter and the soldier and the ex-girlfriend thief was lovely. The rat people, to me at least, were much more interesting than the vampires. But I don't know if there's more to this setting that I was not understanding because I don't know that much about Warhammer Fantasy that would make the vampire revelation much more exciting. But I don't know. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 or an 8. One of those two. Episode 15, Eternal. In this episode, we are back to 40k, and we're following some Space Marines as they're walking around their fortress. And I'm 99% sure they are the Exorcists, which is a really cool sect of Space Marines that specialize in fighting chaos and demons and the warp. Hey, do you know any fun facts about them that makes them particularly interesting? Well, every Space Marine chapter has its own trials and tribulations a person must go through before they can become a Space Marine. And one of the things that you must do if you want to become an Exorcist is you must willingly allow yourself to be possessed by a demon, and then on your own, with your own willpower, push back and defeat that demon inside you. Pretty cool. Anyway, there's two of them. One has a big executor's sword and doesn't say anything, and the other one is just a regular one and he talks and stuff. But he also has a cool skull mask. Well, I guess they both have cool skull masks. They all have cool skull masks. They're walking around their citadel, as you see, and hear things being like tortured in the background. And they go to this big room and they push some buttons and this sarcophagus comes out and it opens up and you can see they have a demon imprisoned in it. And the demon's like, blah, 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 and they're just like, who is he? And the demon doesn't say anything. And then the sarcophagus closes and is pushed away. And then we see sometime later, probably the next day, but who knows? Same thing happened. They come into the room, sarcophagus comes out, things open, the demon is like, what the fuck is going on? Who is he? And he's like, and it closes. And every day or every loop they go back and do that, the demon starts to get more and more freaked out. When the sarcophagus is closed, the demon is basically cut off from all sensation. It's like they are in a black void, completely isolated and alone. And for demons, that's no fun. After they do this enough times, the demon gets more and more worn out, and eventually it's like, I hate you guys! The Space Marine that talks is like, ooh, hate. I can work with hate. Let's come back tomorrow. I bet you'll be ready to talk. Sure enough, the next day, demon is ready to talk. Who is he? Again. He's Lucius. He's not a person, but he's not a demon. He's worse. Can he be killed? And he's like, yes. No? And they're like, that's not an answer. And he's like, you're not an answer. And they're like, we're going to mess you up. And he's like, you guys are the ones that are going to get messed up. And they're like, we beat so many demons up. And he's like, listen, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. And they're like, okay, enough chit chat. And he's like, wait. If you do fight Lucius, just make sure you don't be any of the people that land the killing blow. Make it like a servitor that hits the button from orbit, or you will be cursed too. And now we see some of the evil Marines, some Chaos Marines. 3 of them. There's one with no mask, and he's got a big Joker kind of smile with lots of teeth, and his armor is covered with people's faces that are like moving and wailing, and it looks really cool. And he is Lucius. I knew that before they told us, because come on, whenever they don't have a mask on, it's like, oh, named character, bloop. The other one's kind of like a big Minotaur, and the other one has a face that kind of looks like a shower drain mixed with the Predator. Oh, what are we doing? Our boy got taken by Space Marines. Oh, we should help him. Oh, we should let him get tortured. He'd probably like it. Oh, no, a slight against one is a slight against all. We will get our vengeance. We have nothing to lose. And then the other two are like, boss, you have nothing to lose. We are mortal. You, not so much. Soon, the Space Marines notice that they're there near the castle, and they send a ship out, and a big Space Marine versus Chaos Marine fight begins. And the Chaos Marines are messing the Space Marines up. Eventually, they split into groups, with the Minotaur and Drainpipe going to try to steal the spaceship, and Lucius facing off with those 2 Space Marines we met at the beginning, the one with the big executor sword and the one that was talking to the demon. And then there's this great moment where Lucius is like, shouldn't you guys be like yelling and cursing me and stuff? And then he gets interrupted by one of the Space Marines being like, you are damned and we shall defeat you. And he's like, there we go, okay. It's just a great funny little moment. They start fighting. One of them sets off this sort of time freeze type bomb, and Lucius gets frozen. And then he gets cut in half by the guy with the big executor sword. Kazunk! He dies. Or does he? Because it turns out that was the plan. Because he is both immortal and mortal. Diaphragm? Oh, ow. I'm healing, by the way. This is like 3 or 4 days later at this point. That's why my hair keeps going more and more messy, or less messy, depending on how much energy I have that day. Lucius is slain, sort of with no fanfare, and then we cut back to following that Marine, the mute Space Marine, as they are going about their business. They're not mute, by the way. They took a vow of silence, excuse me. So we see them outside of their armor. Because of his vow of silence, he wears a little veil over his face. We're watching him go about his business, and we notice he's starting to get like a weird cut on his head. We see him practicing against fighting guys, and his chest is getting kind of pale. Eventually he's walking, stumbling around all sick. We see him make his way into what looks like a vault or an armory where they're keeping all of these cursed objects. And he grabs a canister with his weird vine spikes and another canister with a big sword in it and starts lumbering down the hall. And he takes off his veil, and when he does, his face is that big, crazy, evil-toothed smile of Lucius, and he's wearing Lucius's armor, and it's covered with those faces that are like, but one of them is a new face, and it's the face of that Space Marine, the one that slayed him, the one who he has now taken over, and goes and finds that demon that's imprisoned. And when he does, they have a little chat. Doesn't go super well for the demon, because he then takes his sword and smushes it down the demon's throat. Sorry. The episode ends with him charging out of the Space Marine citadel, killing a bunch of Space Marines on the way, eventually getting to the guy that was interrogating the demon at the beginning, and is like, "Do you want me to send you to your brother?" And they have a little fight, gets him, jumps onto his spaceship with his buddies that had stolen it, makes his way off into chaos. Classic Lucius the Eternal. The characters in this were very fun, very colorful, very silly. All of the conversations were a lot of fun. The way the demon spoke when he was being interrogated and was trying to explain how Lucius is like immortal in this sort of unusual way, but also with this sort of riddle-like way that demons speak was a lot of fun. The armor that was doing weird face stuff was really cool. The fight scenes were fun. Pretty good. 7.5. All of the episodes so far have been pretty good. Some of them have been much better than others, but all of them have been at least pretty good. What they do really nicely is show little windows into Warhammer experiences. Specifically, I think the way they show the corruption of chaos. With the second episode that was the library episode, and the later one where we're seeing the Warhammer fantasy guy that's like making sacrifices to demons, because you hear about the chaos and corruption all the time when you're learning about Warhammer, but you don't really think about like, how does it start and how do so many people get into it, and how can people get into it unintentionally? Good world building. Okay, we got one more, and this most recent one is most recent because it was made years after the other ones. I don't know how many years later, but it wasn't like they made 16 episodes. It was like they made 15 episodes, and then a couple years later, they made a 16th. So in theory, I could be done right now, but I'm not, because I'm going to go watch the 16th episode, which I think is called Cadia Returns, and it's CGI, not animated. Well, I guess that's animated, but different kind. We have come to the end. Episode 16, Return to Cadia. This time, it's not a cartoon anymore. We start with a voiceover of two characters talking. One sounds like a crazy evil space marine, and one sounds like a demon. The space marine is like, "What choice did I have in the fire and the darkness?" And the demon's like, "What choice? I'll show you a choice right now." Flash to a transport ship where we see some Cadian soldiers on a pilgrimage back to Cadia, or to a part of Cadia that looks like it's now floating in the warp, sort of. I don't know. I know the story of Cadia is that the planet of Cadia got destroyed and a big chunk of it went into the warp. So I'm not actually sure what place these guys are going to, but it does seem like it's a shrine to Cadia, a memorial to Cadia. They're talking about whether or not it makes sense to even go back here. Some of them are like, "Oh, we shouldn't do this." And the other ones are like, "We have a right. This is our pilgrimage. Cadia is more than a place. It is us." Usual Cadia kind of stuff. We flash back to these demon and space marine talking, which we don't see, by the way. We just see the place that they are, which is just a bunch of metal stuff and dead things, and probably the place that the Cadians are going. In fact, it is the place, because we see the Cadian spaceship land, and the evil Space Marine voice says, "We should just kill them and take their ship and GTFO." And the demon voice is like, "Yes, but then we wouldn't enjoy their fear. We love fear. Who cares about fear? We're wasting time. You have no idea about time. Demon talk. Blah, blah. Well, I hate you. Good. That's kind of the point. Cadians land. They leave the spaceship. First thing they notice, nobody's around. This place looks derelict. But there is a lot of blood. For Cadians, who are supposed to be like the toughest soldiers in the Imperium, they do something very foolish immediately. What is the worst thing you can do when you find yourself in a horror movie situation like an abandoned space station covered in blood? You guessed it, split up. And immediately after they split up, one of the guys gets extra alone and is separated and starts hearing these voices that are like, weak, tender, weak, fragile. It's very reminiscent to the earlier library episode where the demons were trying to compel the guy to open the book, and he starts going crazy, shooting all over the place, running around. And we cut back to two of the main ones, Oldface and Scarface, and they find a room full of dead other Cadians that had made this pilgrimage, as well as their commanding officer. And they're like, okay, we gotta go. The guy who's all alone is like running around like crazy, hearing voices, keeps looking around, it's looking behind him, seeing stuff that's not there. We see him ominously being followed by this massive Chaos Space Marine looking guy covered in spikes. He falls down the stairs. Classic thing to do when you're alone in a horror movie, am I right? But luckily, he is found by Oldface and Scarface. We then cut back to the ship, where there's another guy that has just been waiting by himself. I'm gonna assume he's the pilot. There's an ominous person walking towards him. And she starts saying, "The walls, they whisper. The walls, they whisper." And she starts trying to fight him. We cut back to the narration voice of the evil Space Marine and the demon, and the Space Marine is like, "This is boring." And the demon's like, "This is not boring." Eventually, Oldface, Scarface, and Crazy Guy get back to the ship, and they find the pilot dead, stabbed through the chest. Oldface and Scarface are like, "We gotta get out of here." And they take his body out. Oldface is getting ready to start driving the car, but then Crazy Guy starts going crazy. Not car, spaceship. And all the while it feels like the Chaos Marine and the demon are getting closer as we keep hearing their narration as they seem to be watching what's happening. But it's a little different. The demon is sort of mocking the Space Marine, saying things like, "You know why you're here? Because you were sacrificed. Your brothers left you behind, dog. And then you decided to make a deal with me. You own your decisions, boss." We then see that Crazy Guy is going really crazy, and he starts repeating the same stuff that the ominous other crazy soldier was saying. Weak, fragile. The walls, they whisper. The walls, they whisper. And he starts trying to fight Scarface. They tussle, grenades spill all over the place, and then she pops him one. And that's when the Chaos Marine emerges. They start fighting, but it's not really a fight. She does not give up. She's like trying to stab him with her knife, and it keeps breaking, but she keeps trying. And he just slams her against the wall and almost smashes her to pieces in one hit. She's trying to pull a grenade out, and he stabs her in the chest. And as she falls, it is at this moment that we realize those two narrators we were talking to are coming from the same Chaos Marine. Half of his face is skeletal, gross, decomposed person, and the other one is like evil demon armor. The demon armor half says, "You know what? We can totally leave now if you want to. Let's get on this spaceship." And they start marching their way to the spaceship. But then Oldface appears behind them, and he's like, "Cadia is not just a place, it's a people, like in that movie Ragnarok. Remember that?" And then he cracks a grenade and chucks it into the spaceship behind them, where there are all those grenades on the floor. Cadia Stands. Big explosion. Everybody dies. And then we see that Chaos Marine, or rather the essence of them, in some demonic hell space of darkness and cosmos. You see the demon as this like crazy outline looming over him, and it's like, "Everyone has a choice. and I shall enjoy teaching you that. And its massive hand comes down and seems to consume the soul of the Chaos Marine. And that's the end of the episode. And that's episode 16, which means we finished. I think that probably both the budget and the public interest in Warhammer was not nearly as big when they made the first 15 episodes of Hammer and Bolter, because the quality of the animation in the last one is so good. I don't even want to say this, but it's true. It makes me wish I could see the whole series animated that way, because one of my biggest gripes throughout this whole thing has been the animation has been negatively distracting a lot of the time. So take that or leave that. But in terms of what actually happened to this episode, the plot, the vibe, the action, it was pretty good. I don't think it was a standout episode compared to some of the earlier ones. It didn't have quite as much of like an emotional journey to it. I think if it wasn't CGI, I don't think I would have liked it as much. So I'm gonna give it a 7.1. Okay, that's about it. Overall thoughts, I really liked this series. I wasn't sure if I was going to or not. I loved the anthology style, all of these different windows into different aspects of 40K life, and sometimes fantasy life. Overall, is the series worth watching? I think if you already have the Warhammer Plus subscription, yes, 100%. I think if you don't, I don't know if it's worth paying the whatever it costs a month to just watch this one show. So I can't tell you. I did like it. I watched it while I was on a lot of pain medicine. I'm still on pain medicine because I had gallbladder surgery. So that might have helped too. But I think even if I was just regular state of mind, I would have enjoyed it as well. Yeah, okay, that's it. That's the whole video.